condoms everywhere. There's this one girl, and she looks up at me and goes, "Who the hell are you?" And one of my buddies is in the back, passed out. He's like, "Oh, that guy plays in Guns N' Roses. He's got more money than all of us." And she motioned for me to come over, and I was asked to perform a service, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to need a condom," and they're like, "We're all out. Go find something in the kitchen." And I'm like, "What?" So I go into the kitchen, and the first thing I see is a Pringles can, which probably would have worked at this point of the evening. And I was like, "Well, I can't do that." And then I see an unopened bag of Ritz crackers, and it's like, I got a pretty big hammer. The logistics they're matching up. So I very carefully open up the bag, pour out all the crackers.
And we're back. Hey, everybody. It's your host, Darren Carter, the party starter with the Pocket Party Podcast. And today we have a very special guest, Mr. Earl Skakel.
Yeah, what up? What up?
Yeah, two guys over 40, raising the roof. What up, people?
40? I wish I was 40.
Exactly. Oh, man. Hey, how are you, Earl?
Good. I'm sure every comic is struggling with in their own ways with this pandemic. But that's why I love doing this podcast at night, because that's when I struggle the most, is at night.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. It's like, during the day, you can kind of keep yourself busy with exercising or whatever those things are that you do. But it's when it's like there's something about booking the show. Even tonight, I'm like, all right, I got this. Earl's at 9:00. You kind of, I took a shower. I get ready for it. You mentally prepare for something. But yeah, it's good to do these at night. I feel like, why would I do it in the morning? That sounds like morning radio. It sounds like a nightmare. But yeah.
I mean, it's really messed up my sleep patterns, because now I save, like I bought an elliptical for the house, and I'll do that probably in like an hour or two, where if this was normal times, I would do it at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon to get out of the way before comedy and whatever. But now I'm hyped up till 4 or 5 in the morning, because, you get the endorphins. And so this pandemic's really messed up my sleep schedule.
Yeah, man. It's for our new listeners or people that are new to Earl Skakel. I know a lot about you, but can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, I know you grew up in, I want to say Beverly Hills or Bel Air. It was a really nice area of Los Angeles.
Yeah. I grew up in Bel Air, so I'm proof that not all comics are poor. And no, I'm just kidding. But when you tell people you've grown up in Bel Air, they just assume you're rich. We were like middle class. We were like the Addams Family, because my dad bought a house in Bel Air in the early 60s, when Bel Air was not the Bel Air today. It's just like a grove, a jungle, basically, with very few homes. And then there was the famous Bel Air fire, which happened in the mid-60s, I think. Burned down every home in Bel Air but my dad's. Wow. So it was like we were first up on the tech stock offer. And then, in the 70s, Bel Air, our neighbors were like Kareem, OJ, James Caan, Harry Nilsson, who's often called the fifth Beatle. One of the, probably the most prolific songwriter of the 70s. And then, of course, the 80s, you have like Gloria Vanderbilt and all these big celebrities, Will Chamberlain. So it was, and then, my dad bought a membership to Bel Air Country Club for like $1,200, which in the 60s was a lot. And now I think a membership there costs $300,000 or $400,000. So we weren't really rich. We were, I who knows how much it costs. I'll guess at least $300,000. But so we're just lucky more than rich. But it was still an interesting background to grow up in.
Do you have I'm sure in back then I would imagine, like now I don't really see my neighbors that often. I mean, you kind of see them, you don't really, but I'm sure back in back then you probably would. There's a little bit more interaction with the neighbors. You might see them jogging around or skating. Skating was pretty popular back in the '70s.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used to see Kareem jogging all the time, and it's one of my fondest memories as a child to see a 7'2" black dude
Yeah.
jogging in his like dolphin shorts and his goggles, and because in the '70s, and I'm not trying to do a bit here, there were very few black people in Bel Air in the '70s. It was really just Kareem, OJ, and Will Chamberlain. Uh, and the guy who
Wow.
took me to school. So, I mean, there were so few black people in Bel Air that I would say probably at least 10 times the guy who took me to school, who was very black, we got pulled over before we even got out of Bel Air uh,
Wow.
bec- because they had a private security and they would be like, do you know this guy? I'm like, yeah, that's Leroy. And they thought he was kidnapping me.
Mm. And then I'm sure after a while they were like, okay, yeah, I recognize this kid and this guy, but there'd always be maybe a new guard or something that was a little like, what's up with
Yeah, I
that?
mean,
What's going on here? Yeah.
oh yeah, I mean Leroy drove. It's funny because it's the car I drive now. He drove a green Dodge Charger,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
I can't explain to you how black Leroy was. I mean, he made like Dikembe Mutombo look like an albino. I mean, he was incredibly black. So, and then you had me, this little white kid with long hair. I'm sure the optics of it, and I'm sure
Yeah.
the cops are not, they weren't cops, but the security guys were probably racist, I'll guess. Because these are like, I don't know if it's like this now, but back then, the people who were security for like Bel Air or Beverly Hills or any nice gated community, they were people who got rejected to be cops. So I'm sure they were pissed and probably more racist than the actual police force.
Yeah, they probably were. They're probably like, I don't got to deal with protocol. I'll just, I call it as I see it. You know.
Yeah,
I
so I'm sure it's like, what is Leroy going to do other than abide by their borderline racist techniques?
Yeah. Did did Leroy ever turn you on to any like music or Motown or R&B or anything that you probably wouldn't have been exposed to without Leroy, if you can
Oh, he
recall?
definitely did. He turned me on to Sambo's restaurant, which I mean, it's crazy to me. No, I'm not even kidding. He would take me to Sambo's like every day for lunch now. Sambo's, and there's still the original one in Santa Barbara, which is crazy to me in this era.
Wow. Because
And
I
it's
do remember
great.
Sambo's back in the '70s. I remember that. And then there was like a controversy, and they took it down, or they something. That's crazy. There's still Sambo's out there.
Well, yeah, I think the controversy stemmed from the not the logo, but the sign, outside. It was like a black, either a baby or a person with like a bone ring through it, through the nose, and it was like a pretty like
Yeah.
definitely racist or whatever
yeah.
You know, we were
portrayal of a black person.
yeah, we were talking, like there were certain things that, we grew up with in the '70s and '80s that they don't really it doesn't really fly right now. Like like the Confederate flag was on the General Lee on the Dukes of Hazzard, national television. That was the car, and they would honk their horn and it would go doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And then they'd have that. I believe it was either on the hood or the roof of the car, the Confederate flag, and it was called the General Lee. And I believe now, if you buy that car or see something, it's just orange. They took the flag off.
Oh yeah,
Because
I mean, I was like one of the things I've been doing to pass time is watch old '80s wrestling videos, and African American wrestlers weren't exactly portrayed in the greatest light. But I was watching a match the other day with Kamala, who was this wrestler portrayed to be from Uganda. And he came to the ring in a grass skirt and like a tribal paint on his face, and he was wrestling the Fabulous Freebirds, who were these three rednecks, and one had the Confederate flag painted on his face.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah, I feel old saying this, but like, I'm amazed at some of the racist things that I was exposed to back then that were not racist at the time. I mean, they were racist, but they weren't like, you couldn't do that you couldn't do a wrestler with a Confederate flag on his face in 2020.
Yeah, like if you pitch that, hey, I got this character I want to play. It's like, you know.
Yeah, I got there was another wrestler, and wrestling really seems to be at the crux of racism and in the time frame we're talking about. But, you had the Junkyard Dog who literally came to the ring with a dog collar, barking like a dog, and he had to get on all fours and go, "Arr, arr, arr," and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but then you see like Snoop Dogg, he's got the dog thing happening. Wow, Snoop Dogg, the Digo Double G, the dog pound, and then DMX, DMX, he's like, so there's something masculine, I guess, like when where's all my dogs at, like the whole dog thing. But yeah, you never know. Like, how are people gonna look back at 20 years from now, like those rappers or whatever? It's interesting.
I mean, like one of my favorite shows of all time is The White Shadow, which was about an all-black school, and the basketball team was coached by a white ex-NBA player, and I don't think you could do that show in 2020 because it was just that show was so far ahead of its time. But nowadays I think it would be boring to kids. Like, where are the explosions and where's the CGI and the lasers? And so I mean, in some ways I think that, like, All in the Family, I don't think you could do that show in 2020.
Oh, I know. And that was a great show. Come on, man. That was one of my favorites. Archie Bunker and Edith. Hey, dingbat.
I mean, I think the greatest 10 minutes of sitcom history, and I for once I'm being serious, is that episode, and it was one of the earlier seasons, so I'll say 72 or 73. It was when Sammy Davis forgot his briefcase in the cab. So he goes to Archie Bunker's house, and he has to wait there for about 10 minutes until the cab driver comes there. And that 9 minutes where he's in Archie Bunker's house and they have this back and forth, the writing is like beyond anything that's on TV today.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to look that up. So I'll just Google Sammy Davis Jr. on the Archie Bunker show, Archie Bunker's Place or something, I think.
If you look up Sammy Davis, All in the Family, I think.
Oh, All in the Family. That's right. Yeah.
The 9-minute scene where he's in his chair, he sat in Archie's chair, and it starts with that. And then I think at one point he accidentally takes Archie's glass and drinks out of it. And then he gives it back to Archie to drink out of it. And you just see Archie just kind of look at the glass like, I can't drink this now. And it's just, it's subtle humor, but it's very racial. And
what was great about that character is, like, there were people who would look at Archie and be like, what an idiot. The guy is so stupid. Just, and there was other people who would look at it and be like, oh my God, that's me, or that's my dad, or that's, so it was very, relatable. And either people like agreed with him and or they thought the character was stupid, but it's like, that character is very relatable.
I mean, he was really my first comedy influence. Like most comics have like stand-ups, they gravitated to it. But Archie Bunker was like, when I got a little older and could process, the reality of his character, was like, I want to say jokes like he was saying, where there's the content is so awful, but you still liked him. Like he was a buffoon. And probably the highlight of my comedy career by far is when I was doing it was called The House Racist Heckler, on Roast Battle, and Jim Carrey was up there one night. And from day one, I mean, I was doing an impression of a former talent coordinator, but it was always geared towards being Archie Bunker. And Jim Carrey, after Jim Carrey was judging that night, and no one ever got it when I would say, hey, I'm doing like Archie Bunker, and people would be like, who's that? Because it was a younger crowd. And Jim Carrey just goes up to me and whispers into my ear, hey, Archie, where's Edith? And
oh, that's awesome.
I could have quit comedy after that's how brilliant his mind was, is he instantly got it.
Yeah. I mean, whenever you would do that character, like, wow, I mean, it's just funny. It's like, so you do that character so good, Wow.
Well, I mean, it was, Earl, they're attacking, head to high ground. I mean, it was just, it still blows me away that a man who had, let's just say, those interesting takes on certain elements of society was in charge of the Comedy Store.
Right.
Like it still blows my mind. I mean, we all have an inward story of this person. Like the first time he ever spoke to me was he said that word, and I'm like,
wow, it's jarring, isn't it? It's like jarring, like, whoa, wow. Yeah. Did you ever hear a story like these? Like he might have said that word to some comics or something, and they wanted to fight him or punch him or something. I heard something like that in the cover booth or something. I don't know.
I mean, I think I heard Doc Willis one time was like, Doc was pretty. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if militant's the right word, but he didn't take any. Can you swear on this? He didn't take any. He didn't take any shit.
Right.
So I think Tommy at one point referenced some black audience members in not the greatest way, and Doc was like, "You're not saying that about my people." Yeah. But nothing ever happened, which is, the great thing about Doc is he ended up being on the cartoon I'm on.
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Doc was a guy who kind of struggled to fit in at the Comedy Store, I think, and this is back in the day. People think Roast Battle was an aggressive show, but, before that, Comedy Store, as is pretty aggressive in their cliques and, making fun of people. And Doc always got made fun of. Oh, you're the loser parking lot guy. Just shut up and park my car, you loser, or whatever. And now he's on a cartoon making more money than anyone who ever made fun of him.
That's awesome. He's, by the way, guys, if you're listening and you want to check out one of my albums, it's called The Party Continues, and Doc Willis introduces me. So you can hear Doc Willis on my fourth album, The Party Continues. But
yes. Buy all of Darren's albums. We're all struggling, but I don't think people realize how much they can help guys like you and me who we're not famous, but we're not famous. We're in a weird fame level.
It's like I know when I get Earl Skakel on this podcast, I know that I'm going to get more listeners, and I know you're in. You know what I mean? We're not at that level of like you said, we're nobody knows us, but we're not at the level where, something like this actually gets us, it helps us. It's like more people will see both of us and it just helps. It's like, I mean, you've been, how long have you been doing comedy? Cause I remember you for years now. I remember when you had the longer hair and the hockey jerseys and you were funny back then.
Thank you.
You must be, if I were to guess, you've probably been doing this 25 plus years. Am I there? Or
I mean, I've been doing it so long. I honestly don't remember when I started. I can't remember my first show because I've probably done thousands of shows. I'll say 20 years. I think I started around maybe late 99. It's just the shows run the years, the shows, they just, it's a blur.
It is a blur, man. It really does. They say that happens with Los Angeles because there's not a lot of seasons really. And and the years kind of blur, and then you're like, whoa, has that been like 7 years already? It's crazy, like, having a kid really helps, like, with time, because my son's 12, and so I'm like, he's 12 years old, and then I mean, yeah, that really is a timekeeper, because there's no getting around it,
Yeah, but I was a maniac when I started. Like, I would say my first 5 years, I averaged going up 20 times a week. I'd go up, I would say on average 2.5 times a night, sometimes 4 times a night, sometimes one. So I would say my first 3 to 5 years, I had the experience level of someone who's been doing it for 10.
Yeah. And what's good is you were like a little older when you started, like you weren't like when I started, I was still a teenager, and, I didn't have much life experience. I didn't really get, like, more relatable actually until I would say I was in my like late 20s. Like, a lot of my earlier stuff was funny if you were into pop culture references and younger, and, you know what I mean? It's probably good that you didn't start it like as a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old. You already kind of had things to say when you started.
I mean, I wish it's probably the only true regret I have is not starting just maybe a little earlier, just because I started at 30, which in stand-up is ancient. I mean, you see kids today and they're starting 17, 18, 19 years old. I don't know if I wish I started that early, but I just think, when I was 30, I was at open mics with people who were 20, and not that, I was probably more polished than they were, just because, like you said, I had more life experience. But, this industry is a young person's game for the most part. So, I started when I started, so there's nothing I can do about it. But
yeah, do you I want to ask you something about the country club. So Bel Air. So I'm reading this book right now, and in the book they're talking a lot about golf, and it's by Stephen Pressfield, and it's called The Authentic Swing. And he's combining writing with golf, and how he's written his screenplay. He wrote Bagger Vance, and he said that he was talking about like when the squires, when they would go to war, like they'd have these younger boys like holding their weapons for the great warriors. And that's kind of how he thought of, I can do this with golf. They get the caddies, and they got the golfers and the caddy. And even though it's just you and the caddy, that's the only one by the rules that are allowed out there. Have you ever been, I was telling my brother-in-law about this, and he's like, what is it? Because my brother-in-law's into golf. He's like, so you're reading a book about how to be a caddy and how to serve other people? I'm like, no, I mean, I'm just saying it's, the whole golf. But have you ever golfed using a caddy, or was that kind of played out by the time you, that might've been like using a caddy. Is that common, or has that been replaced by?
I mean, nowadays, well, I think Bel Air had a rule that you had to use a caddy. And it's funny, my dad was the most popular member with the caddies because he would tip double.
Oh, nice.
And he would let you ride in he was very caddy friendly. Like, he would let them ride with him in the car, where most other members would, I'm going to ride the cart, you walk. And he would let them, and he would drink beer with them. And like for, I think 18 holes, you're supposed to tip him like $40. This is back then. My dad would give him 100 for 9 holes.
Wow.
So
they must have loved him. That's awesome.
Oh, they fought to get his bag. Like, when my dad would roll up, it was like the bulls of Pamplona trying to get his bag. So, and probably the best story I can tell about my dad is, he was like the Rodney Dangerfield character in Caddyshack. He probably had the most money of anyone up there, but if you looked at him, he had a shirt on inside out. He was a diabetic, so he was always eating candy. In his mind, that's how he regulated his insulin. So he'd have like chocolate bars in his car and golf bag that clearly had melted. He would just eat them, rub it on his shirt, and one day he's standing at the valet, and James Garner, the actor,
I love him. I love James Garner.
up. Yeah, Rockford Files, Maverick, many. And James Garner looks at my dad, and my dad was so disheveled looking. James Garner says something like, "Hey, boy, go take my bags to the first tee."
Ooh.
So my dad, being like who he was, took the bags to the first tee. And then James Garner walks up and goes, "Yeah, I'm supposed to play golf with Jim Skakel." And my dad was like, "You're looking at him."
That's awesome. Wait, I got to ask real quick. What did your dad do for a living, like to have this sort of lifestyle?
Well, my dad was like a modern day MacGyver. He did everything. Like he was on the cover of Life magazine in the '60s for killing a whale. I mean a whale.
Wow.
Like not a little baby whale, like a giant whale. His dad had a company in the Depression era that was the only company that made money, because he would drive by oil refineries and he would ask them for their waste. And they thought he was crazy. You want our waste? It would be like going up to the comedy store saying, "Hey, can I have your paper shredding clippings?" And yeah, go ahead. And he would turn the waste into like graphite and other products. And, you probably have 100 things in your house that are made from graphite and you don't even know it.
Wow.
So he was like a businessman. He was like a scratch golfer, self-taught. He was like, there's really no one. He was like an adventure man, survivalist, hunted polar bears. So he was like Rodney Dangerfield meets Jacques Cousteau meets Arnold Schwarzenegger and Predator.
Wow. That's so cool, man. Are you an only child? Do you have siblings or?
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, so 5 of us. I'm the baby. And
sounds like you had a special relationship with your dad. That's so cool, man. That's really cool.
I mean, I was actually closer more with my mom, who's I probably got along with my dad the best out of my siblings, just because I subscribe to the theory, to get along, you go along with my dad. Like, he was a big dude, so he was a very intimidating presence. Like, I don't know of a celebrity comparison, but he was like almost like a Russell Crowe and Gladiator. You didn't want to see him mad. So some of my other brothers and sisters might have fought him a little bit, rebelled, I guess. I was pretty much an ass kisser.
Yeah. Hey, man, like we both have astigmatism, so I get it. Like we don't. Yeah, I used to have a fear. Yeah, I used to not. I remember one time I almost got into a fight. Well, kind of, not really, but like in 8th grade, and my glasses came off, and I was instantly. I mean, when you're nearsighted and astigmatism, it's like, I mean, now I wear contact lenses, but I mean, yeah, you don't want to. You feel kind of vulnerable, right, with the glasses. I mean, I did, anyways. I don't know about you, but
yeah, I mean, I did, because I was bullied in like grade school / high school, because I've literally been the same size since the 4th grade. So, and kids back then were a lot meaner than today. Like nowadays, and you have a 12-year-old, and I'm sure he's in the prime zone for bullies, but nowadays you can bully online and go, "Oh, this guy looks like a fat piece of blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This girl's a whore." But back then, you got bullied to your face. Like,
And also, nowadays there's so many, like they nip it in the bud right away. I mean, they'll call it like a hate crime, or they'll be like zero tolerance. So from what I understand, I mean, maybe what really goes on isn't like that, but I feel like nowadays it's probably harder to get bull. I don't think you know what I mean? I think they got to really go underground with it. You're right. You can't just like, "Hey, punk, give me your shoes." I mean, not in.
Yeah, I mean, like in 6th, 7th grade, I was the same size I am now. So people would make fun of me, call me Herman Munster and Lurch. That was my nickname in grade school, was Lurch, because I talk I still talk like I did back then. So
wow, you would think that like with your size and deep voice that they would be afraid of you, but I guess you're who you are. It doesn't matter your size, and that makes it easier. They're like, oh, that big kid. I made fun of him to his face. Like
it was awful.
Yeah.
And like I have a big head. It sounds like I'm going into a bit, but like, so in high school when I wasn't as big as everyone, like I had never seen kids my age, my size or bigger until I got to high school. So they would call me like Elephant Man because my head's pretty big.
Yeah, and that movie was on cable all the time. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's constantly on, and it's funny now, but back then I used to go home crying and like.
I remember the first time these kids made fun of me. I was because I went to the same elementary school, actually kindergarten through 6th grade. So those kids kind of knew back then. I had bright red hair, and hold on. Check this out. I just found this picture during this quarantine. This is me at 18. Look at this.
Yeah, but you're a good-looking dude, man.
Yeah, I look like Vanilla Ice. I used to call myself Strawberry Fudge. But look, but imagine that all that hair, that was all bright red. So that was like the Rick Astley day. But yeah, so I remember I was 12 years old, and we were standing in alphabetical order. And I remember standing, in PE, and I remember I'm a Carter, and there was this kid next to me whose last name started with B. And these big kids, like the 8th graders, they were over there, and they were like pointing at what I thought was him, and they were calling him Buddy Holly, and his hair was bright, and making fun of him. And I remember thinking like, oh, it's messed up. They're making fun of that guy. And then I realized it was me that they were making fun of. And then your heart just sinks,
right.
Like, damn, like. Yeah, wow, Buddy Holly. And then I because I used to wear the big glasses, and man, that was a wake up call. I was like, I remember asking this other redhead kid who I had gone to church with. He went to the same school, and he was a year older. And I go, hey, they keep making fun of me. And he goes, yeah, after about 2 weeks they'll get tired of it. Just laugh along. And he was kind of right. Like it kind of went away after a while, but.
I mean, I guess there's varying ways to deal with bullies. Like now I find that if you stand up to the bully, they'll back down. Not that I'm picking fights at 51 years old, but like,
yeah.
But like we're comics, we bust balls a little bit, but sometimes I'll have a comic come at me, and I'll go right back at them. They are quiet right away.
Yeah, you're so good at that. I was going to say that we were on Brian Holtzman's podcast recently, and you I forget how you went into it, but you were doing some gentle roasting of our buddy Ralphie May, God rest his soul. But you had so many funny lines. Like, how do you have a gift for it, man? Like.
Well, I loved Ralphie. Like I said on the podcast, I would have jumped into the coffin with him if there was room. But, shoot, 594 pounds getting cremated. That guy must have took a month off. I love Ralphie, though. Like, Ralphie said, and he didn't just tell me this, but he said, Earl, when I die, don't cry, don't be sad, make fun of me.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's bullying if but it's a self-defense mechanism, I think, for me. Like, like I play hockey, and hockey is a very, it's like a very alpha male. It's a very kill or be killed, and I don't fight, but I'll verbally just annihilate the person that's trying to actually fist fight me.
Wow.
And,
yeah.
Because they're bullies, and I had this young kid, trying to get me to fight him, and I'm like, I'm not going to fight you, dude. And then I just started laying into him, and you can hurt someone verbally almost more than you can physically.
Yeah. my son made me laugh today because he's a musician. He plays bass and guitar and piano, and he's really, because his voice is changing. It's gotten that lower red. He's got a deep voice now, but he loves to go online and harmonize, and he's got a perfect pitch so he can tell like we've been playing this game where I will I'll say a letter and a number, and he'll try to hit that note, like
Right.
C3 and that kind of thing. So today, I think as a goof, like he was sitting next to me, we were eating, and I kept touching him, and he's like, Dad, you touched me again. I'm gonna. I could do this. This would be hilarious if you did this to a bully. He goes, if you touch me again, I'm gonna do a C7 in your face. And I did it. And I just want to see what that sounded. And I touched him, and he's like, ah! And I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I fired back. I go, I'm going to do a B1. And he goes, because I didn't even know what that means. I go, I'm going to do a B1. And he goes, that wouldn't even hurt me. Because apparently it's like, or something. But these are the kind of like fun games I do with my son. Like, just goofing around. But yeah, that wouldn't work in real life. Like, I'm going to do a D1 in your face.
Unless it was in West Hollywood, probably not.
Exactly. They're like, give me all that D.
Yeah, I'll take a D1 and a 2 and a 3.
Hey, before you started comedy in your 30s, I know I'm setting you up. I feel like Byron Allen. Don't tell, but I know you used to run around with some young gun agents, right? I remember I've heard some of the parties you guys would go to. Can you feel like telling us some of those stories? Those are hilarious to me.
It's funny. I'm in a text thread with that group right now, and I'm like, these were the guys who got me into comedy. They were all agents and managers, and they weren't like interns. They were like big agents, and one specifically is a gigantic manager today. And they were all like, we would play hockey and go to nightclubs, and they were like, dude, get into comedy. You're funnier than anyone at our agency. And I'm like, how do I do it? They're like, well, just figure it out and we'll help you. And of course, I get into comedy, and then they all leave the business to get into real estate, those bastards. And that's why it took me like 13 years to get on TV. But we got to go to all the biggest clubs, and because at that time in the late 80s and early 90s, all the guys who were doormen at clubs and the bars and the restaurants that were the hot ones were all actors. So they knew all my friends were agents and managers. So we never had to wait in line. And it was like being a celebrity without being a celebrity. And, I was telling some of this the other day. I was at some parties where I had to leave. I felt uncomfortable with the activities that were going on. And one party really that stands out is I got a call about, 2 or 3 in the morning, and hey, get over to, well, let me change the name here. Get over to Bill's house. And Bill lived on Doheny, and I'll just leave it at that. And so it's permanent parking on Doheny, so there was no parking. And so I knew when they told me at 3 in the morning to get over to Bill's house, it was for a reason. It wasn't to read scripts. And
yeah.
So I literally parked my car. I didn't even park it. I just left it in the middle of Doheny with the lights on, the engine running. I ran out of the car. I go up to Bill's apartment, and it was like that opening scene in Saving Private Ryan where there's just bodies everywhere, and like there's condoms everywhere. There's one girl, and she looks up at me and goes, "Who the hell are you?" And one of my buddies is in the back, passed out. He's like, "Oh, that guy plays in Guns N' Roses. He's got more money than all of us." And she motioned for me to come over, and I was asked to perform a service, and I was like, well, I'm going to need a condom. And they're like, we're all out. Go find something in the kitchen. And I'm like, what? So I go into the kitchen, and the first thing I see is a Pringles can, which probably would have worked at this point of the evening. And I was like, well, I can't do that. And then I see an unopened bag of Ritz crackers. And it's like, I got a pretty big hammer. The logistics they're matching up. So I very carefully open up the bag, pour out all the crackers. I put it on. That was my protection, and then you know how guys are. When they're done with a girl, they just want her out. When you're single and whatnot. And so I felt so bad for this girl. I said, "Well, I'll give you a ride home or wherever, because I could tell my buddies they were animals. They just wanted her out. It was about 4 a.m. at this point, and." She said, well, I'll give you a ride home. Just get your clothes. I'm tired. Let's get out of here. So I don't know where my clothes are, which I wouldn't have blamed her. This apartment at 4 a.m. after 9 hours of whatever they were doing looked like a Ross blew up. It was just clothes everywhere. So she said, well, I'll give you a ride, but we got to go now. So she just puts on a jacket and that's it. And so we get to my car on Doheny, which is still there, lights running, engine running.
Wow.
I get the door for her. I actually get the door for her. I don't think this girl would have cared if I didn't get her door. And so I get in the car, and I'm a car buff, like Rogan. I love cars, and I'm very knowledgeable. I go to auto auctions, not to buy, but just, I'm a fan of nice cars. And I notice on her jacket, it says Shelby Motors. And I start freaking out going, oh, my God, Carroll Shelby, the guy who made the Cobra Mustang? He's a legend. And she just looks at me in a delivery that's drier than mine right now and goes, know him? And I'm like, wow.
Wow.
Can you imagine how horny she would have been if she was single? So there's a little bit more of the story if you want to hear it. I don't know if we have time constraints.
Tell us.
Okay, so this was back in the time when I used to work at a gym. So, the next day I had to work. I tell these 2 guys at the gym the story. Like, gosh, you wouldn't believe the night I had last night. And they tell us. So I tell them the story. They're like, we got to meet this girl. And the one guy was a big steroid bodybuilder. He's like, I'll tell her I play on the Raiders. I'm like, you don't have to do that. You really don't have to say that. And then there's this little dude. He's like, I'll tell her I'm Michael Jackson's producer. I'm like, she doesn't really care. You don't really have to tell her that. So I take these 2 guys after work. I call this girl up. I said, hey, I figured 2 guys would be nothing for this girl. I said, I got some buddies that want to meet you. So I drop them off at the hotel that she was staying at. And of course, I'll never forget, it was the Sterling Plaza. So Donald Sterling owned this hotel. It kind of makes sense now. And they call me 3 days later. 3 days. And they're like, hey, Earl, thanks a lot. And I'm like, how was it? She's amazing, right? They're like, how was it? We're still here. Now, there's one more part of the story. And he's one of the guys I ran around with who wasn't at the first party, he's still in the business. So I'll just leave out names. And he calls me up and says, "Hey, I got to go to this girl's pad. The boys are talking about her." I'm like, "Yeah, just go over there. She's at the Sterling Plaza on Beverly Glen and Wilshire." And he's like, "I'll take her to dinner." I'm like, "Dude, you don't have to do that. You really don't. Just go over there." And he's like, no, I'll take her to dinner and play pool. I'm like, you don't have to do either, but here's where she is. You do whatever you do. So the next day she calls me and I'm like, "Hey, how was Rick?" That was good time, good sex. And she she tells me over the phone, "I didn't have sex with him." I'm like, "Huh? You didn't have sex with one guy? Were you not attracted to him?" She's like, "No, Earl, I'm not having sex with anyone that can't beat me in pool."
Wow. That's hilarious.
That's a true story. Nothing exaggerated.
Oh man. Wow. Earl, before we get out of here, I like to usually, yeah, I know.
What a story to end on.
Exactly. Well, let me ask you this. First of all, where can people find you? What would you like to? I know. Is it the Jellies? Or is that the name of the show? The Jellies?
Yeah, you can. I'm on Tyler, the creators, the Jellies, which you can stream, I believe, for free on Adult Swim. And if you like roast battle, you can stream all my roast battles on Comedy Central. If you just look my name up in the search engine, all my battles pop up. And then I was on I'm Dying Up Here on Showtime, but I don't know if you can stream that on Showtime. And then on social media, I'm just at Earl Skakel. That's EARL SKAKEL. And if you listen to all of Darren's Pocket Party podcast and you're bored, you got nothing else to do, you can listen to the Inappropriate Earl podcast.
Yeah. Earl's one of the most entertaining people, man, on podcasts and also like, dude, online. I probably wouldn't. I'm not really too entertained by Twitter. There's a lot of like anger on there, but there are people that make me laugh, and there's a handful of them, and you're one of them, man. You're funny, man. You're funny on there. I like how you just. I feel like your goal is to go for the funny on Twitter. You know.
Well, it's like I was just watching this. Now I have nothing to gain by plugging this show. I'm not affiliated with it in any way, but I was watching this show on Bravo called Camp Getaway, and it's one of those phony reality shows where it's like 7 young, good-looking people as camp counselors, and they're all hooking up and all that stuff. And in one of the scenes tonight, they had a party for all the camp attendees. Like, people pay money to go to this camp for the weekend. And they had a comedy show. And the one girl, she's from New York, and she's like, well, boy, I haven't done stand-up in a while. But the last 3 weeks, she's been telling everyone she's a stand-up. And it's like, well, how are you a stand-up if you haven't done comedy for a while? And then they show her eating a shit burger for about 2 minutes. And it's like, so I sent out a tweet that I said something to the effect of, hey, does anyone have any connections with a reality show? I'd like to bomb for 2 minutes to help my career.
Yeah.
Like, she'll get gigs from clubs seeing her on TV. They don't care if she's doing well or not, but they can say, hey, come see the girl from Camp Getaway.
Right. I know. I remember thinking, like, how much longer until you see like a Honey Boo Boo or one of these? They're just gonna, like, now at the Irvine Improv or wherever. It's like, I mean, we've seen it. That's why. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, look at like Stormy Daniels. Like I saw a tweet from her today, and I got nothing against her. I mean, I don't watch porn, even though it looks like I produce it. I think right now I'm doing bits.
Yeah.
And she was. I'll give her this. She answers all her trolls. So when someone says you're a whore, she's like, "Well, I'm a whore, but I'm also a comedian." It's like, honey, you're not a comedian. Like
right.
Me and Darren Carter. The great Roger Rod, one of your old roommates, Chris D'Elia, we're comedians.
Yep.
You are just, trying to cash in on the 15 minutes. And so it just, I guess I call people out on Twitter, like, in a fun way.
Yeah.
A hinge of bitterness, just because it's like, I've been doing comedy like 20 years. You've been doing it the same. And then to see Stormy Daniels headline clubs that wouldn't even let me feature for Jeremy Piven, probably. It's like,
right,
man, this business sucks.
Yeah. Do you? I always ask people to when we wrap up the show, if they have any, like, I would say this, like, any words of wisdom, things that you've learned along the way. I mean, anything you want to partake. I mean, like, yeah.
I mean, for comics or just life in general?
Either or, comics, life in general.
I mean, really, for comics, just start sooner than 30. Believe it. It's. I mean, that's one of the things I do love about comedy is you can make it if you're older. Now making it is different to us all, but like if you're funny, you'll make it. Like at some point, you'll get your shot. Might be the wacky neighbor on a sitcom, might be a Conan set, but you will get the opportunity. And this kind of goes to my advice I would give to regular people. Be nice to everyone. And that's something I learned from my dad. My dad, like I said, was as nice to the caddies at Bel Air Country Club as he was to his billionaire business friends. And I've taken that to heart. Like, I'm as nice to Boone Shakalaka, who is a homeless transvestite at the Comedy Store, and I'm as nice to him as I am to Russell Peters. Yeah. I probably am nicer to Boone than I am Russell, and it would benefit me more to be nicer to Russell. But because you never know, like, you should be nice to people just because that's how you should be. But like you and I have both started, when I started out, I started with Whitney Cummings, Jeselnik, Natasha Leggero, and I was nice to them. And I was nice to the open micers who never made it. So.
And that goes a long way too, because there's nothing worse than when, I'm sure you've seen this, where they get to another level and then they kind of dismiss you and they kind of, oh, hey, Earl. And they just kind of, it's weird, right? Like, so it's good to just, be nice to everybody and, make everybody feel good.
Yeah. I mean, you look at Natasha, she's got her own show now, and I think on CBS. And I mean, Jeselnik's always got a show on TV, and Whitney's like the queen of, the entertainment business. So,
let me ask you a question, because I do, with your experience, do you ever see something in some of the people that have, quote, like made it to that really big level? Like, do they have a certain common thread, or is it just, is it more than hard work? Because I feel like a lot of people do work, but is there luck involved, or what do you think it is? Or do you have any, you know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, a lot of it is luck, I'm certainly not on the level of the comics I just named, but like how I got on the cartoon, it was a series of lucky events. Brian Moses was nice enough to have me be the sidekick on Roast Battle for a long time. And, that was a show that when it started out, all the industry passed on it. Like literally every network was, I don't know what they said, but you could tell they were like, who's going to watch two unknown comics talk about who they slept with and who's gay in the open mic community? No one's going to watch that. Even I didn't think people would watch that. And then, it blew up. And then one night, Tyler, the Creator, was sitting in the audience, and, he's the biggest rapper in the world right now. He just won a Grammy, and he's got a clothing store in Fairfax, line out the door every day, and clothing line, and he's got his own social media app. And it was just lucky that he was there one night I was killing, and I don't even remember what I was saying, to be honest. It was just, I rarely kill. I mean, usually I do okay, I have a good set, not great, but that night I just, for whatever reason, I was on fire, and it was just luck that he was there that night. And
that's awesome.
I think Gerard Carmichael brought him there just on a fluke. They were in the studio doing something, and I don't know what was said, but I'm sure Gerard was like, "Hey, let's go to Roast Battle tonight."
So you know what? I guess you do have to be where the luck is going to happen. Like you can't. Like, what if you were so funny, but you were performing in, Riverside, for example, or someplace? But you
never know. Like. Yeah. And I did those Riverside gigs with Eddie Jarvis. They were horrible. But, it goes to, like, I remember when I started with Whitney, we would do the Sportsman's Lodge on Friday and Saturday nights. And I was probably more highly thought of than her at the time. Like, as crazy as that sounds, like, I would get to go on before her. And so you never know who's going to make it. And like I said, you should be nice to everyone, because that's just how it should be, but you go to
in other words, you don't want to be like, if there's any comedians watching this, the up and coming comedians, you don't want to be the guy that's in the back of the room talking shit on everybody and being negative and just being, you know what I mean? Where you're like, yeah, you don't want to be like that. You want to be more like Earl says, you want to be more positive and,
I mean, you don't have to be phony nice, but like, I really learned that from my dad, but, you also see, the D'Elia's, he takes care of all his friends, all his comedy friends who were probably nice to him when he was nobody. Not that he was ever a nobody, but like, when he wasn't as known, and Whitney uses the same people, and Natasha does. And, cause they remember who was nice to them when they were nobodies or not known. And once again, I'm not on their level, but like I've gotten people auditions for my voiceover, agency that, I thought, oh, this person was nice to me when I wasn't on TV at all. Let me see if I can get them in, and, stuff like that.
I remember when I was, now this isn't as positive, but I'll tell you sort of a negative story. I remember when I was up and coming, this headliner, I was the opener, he was the headliner, and he counted every time I said the F word. And when I walked off stage, he threw a paper at me and he goes, "Here." And I picked it up and it said 17 fucks. And I know what he's trying to say, like maybe don't, but the way he did it was so rude, and I'll never forget that. And I don't even think that guy's in the business anymore, but that was not a nice person to do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll remember one time I'll never forget. It was the first time I met Josh Wolf. We did some horrible sports bar gig in like Corona. Like it was just way up. And it was a Barry Neal gig, and I don't mind saying his name because I'll never interact with him again. And I was kind of green at the time, and I survived on being likable more than funny. And he gave me the light after like 3 minutes because he said, "You swore. I told you not to swear, and this is my room, and you're going to go and you're going to take tickets for the rest of the show while I'm on." It was a total like, whoa, dude! Like, I drove out here for free. And Josh Wolf was just like eye rolling and going, "Dude, this guy is just trying to get a few minutes of stage time." And, point is, I'm probably in a position now to help Barry Neal, and I never would. Right. He's not asked me, but like, I'm sure he wouldn't mind being on an Adult Swim cartoon. And
right.
And I've seen it with Roast Battle too. Like, that's its own subculture, but like, I've seen people kind of be mean to some of the younger roasters, and then some of these younger roasters are also good stand-ups, and they get on TV, say a Conan spot, and then these roast battle comics who aren't, necessarily good at stand-up and they need help. They're not going to get a Conan audition because, oh, you made fun of me when I wasn't a good roast battler, which, I just got on Conan, bro. So, you want my recommendation to Conan? I'm going to give it to Earl over you.
Yep. That's it, man. Earl, thank you so much for coming on the Pocket Party podcast. You guys check out Earl. I guarantee you're going to like it, man. And what can I say? Thank you.
Dude, thank you. You I get misty-eyed when I think of, when I first started and when I first met you, you were always nice to me and always very funny. And, I think sometimes comics have a hard time appreciating a style that's opposite of theirs. And like, I can't do what you do, dude. Like your impressions and, the sound effects and like the great jokes. Like, I feel like Eddie Van Halen liking, Charlie Daniels. Like it's
right.
If that makes any sense, but you're one of the good ones, man. And like,
thank you, buddy.
When I first met you, like I would say from that time to now, like 85% of the people that we were in it with have quit. So
I know,
I appreciate you more than you probably know.
Oh, Earl, you're the best, man. And I'd love for you to come back and we'll tell more stories, man. Thank you so much.
Oh, Believe me, there's a lot more stories. None of them comedy related.
What happened to those Ritz crackers? Were they on the counter? What happened? I want to know.
Well, the funny thing is, and I know we got to wrap it up, but when I took the cracker off, or when I took the bag off, you know those ice cream things? My pee-pee looked like a Nutter Butter.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. What a life. What a life. Earl, thank you so much, man. Have a great night, and thank you. And go get a good workout now at 2 a.m. Yeah.
I know. It's the worst. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Darren.
You're welcome, buddy. Thank you.
We're done with this interview.
Well, look at you watching the video all the way through. I want to thank you guys for checking out the Pocket Party podcast, putting these on so I can see a little bit better. And man, what else can I say? It's great watching the YouTube channel build, growing. People are subscribing, they're leaving comments, they're sharing it. And it's been a real treat to be a part of your life. And I really appreciate you guys checking out the videos. What else can I tell you? I think that's about it. Do me a favor and click one of these videos and keep on watching. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks again, Darren Carter, Party Starter.